Kang Hyun-woo had evicted Crystal Arona from his newly acquired hotel with the cruelty of a man who'd never tasted consequence. He'd pointed his finger, sneered at her mourning clothes, and ordered his men to toss her belongings into the rain like garbage. He'd watched her walk away, clutching a worn urn, her husband's ashes, and felt nothing but satisfaction. 3 days later, he stood in the syndicate's conference room, waiting to claim his promotion to chairman. The lawyer opened the will. The Golden Dragon Empire, all territories, ledgers, accounts, and authority, passes entirely to the chairman's wife, Crystal Arona. And the floor dropped out from under him. Because the quiet widow he'd humiliated, the woman whose grief he'd mocked, wasn't just anyone's wife. She was his boss's wife, the woman who now owned everything, including him. Hey family, before the story begins, I want you to do something real quick. Drop a comment below and tell me where you're watching from. I know you're busy and I don't take your time lightly. I spend hours crafting these stories so they hit deep. If you're still here, it means something already pulled you in. So before we go any further, just tap subscribe. It really helps more than you think. The rain started just as Hyun-woo's men dragged the last suitcase across the marble lobby. He stood under the hotel's gold-trimmed awning, pristine in his tailored black suit, watching water soak into the cheap fabric of the widow's bags. One of his men kicked a small wooden box. It tumbled, spilling photographs across the wet pavement. The widow scrambled to collect them, her black dress clinging to her knees. "Clean this trash up," Hyun-woo said, flicking his cigarette into a puddle. His men laughed. She didn't look up. He'd waited years for this building, the Sky Tower Hotel, 20 floors of prime Seoul real estate, sitting right in the heart of syndicate territory. Owning it meant power, meant the elders would finally see him as more than just muscle, meant the chairman's seat was within reach. But first, he had to clear out the last tenant. Hyun-woo had walked into the penthouse 2 hours earlier with an eviction notice and 6 men. The widow was sitting by the window, staring at nothing. No makeup, no jewelry, just a plain black dress and that unsettling stillness that made his skin prickle. "Crystal Arona?" He'd slapped the paper onto the table beside her. "You have 1 hour. Pack light." She'd turned to look at him then. Her eyes were dark, calm, eerily focused. "You don't want to do this." He laughed, actually laughed. "Is that a threat from a squatter?" "A warning," she'd said quietly. "Let me guess, your husband was important?" Hyun-woo circled her chair, hands in his pockets. "Let me tell you something about important men, sweetheart. They don't leave their wives in hotel rooms with expired leases. They don't die and leave them with nothing." He leaned down, his tattooed neck inches from her face. "You're nobody, and you're in my building." She'd stood then, moving past him without flinching, and started packing a single suitcase. No argument, no tears, just that maddening, unreadable composure. It irritated him more than resistance would have. His men had torn through the penthouse, checking for hidden valuables, contraband, anything worth keeping. They found nothing but old books, cheap clothes, and a small ceramic urn on the nightstand. One of the younger guys reached for it. "Don't touch that," Crystal said, her voice sharp for the first time. Hyun-woo waved the guy off. "Leave it, probably ashes or some sentimental garbage." He glanced at her. "You can take your dead husband with you, assuming he's even in there." Her jaw tightened, but she said nothing. She placed the urn carefully into a cloth bag, slung it over her shoulder, and walked toward the door. "Wait," Hyun-woo stepped in front of her. "Before you go, I want to make something very clear. You don't come back, you don't call, you don't tell sad stories to reporters or lawyers. Understand?" She met his gaze. "Enjoy the chair, Mr. Kang. It's colder than it looks." He smirked. "I'll manage." Now, standing in the rain, watching her gather soggy photographs from the gutter, he felt a flicker of something. Not guilt, never that, just a vague sense that she seemed too calm, too knowing. But then his phone buzzed, a message from Elder Chin. Board meeting, 9 a.m. Wear your best suit. Big day. The flicker vanished. Hyun-woo turned on his heel, motioning for his men to follow. Behind him, the widow clutched her urn and disappeared into the rain-soaked streets of Gangnam. He didn't look back. The syndicate's headquarters was a sleek glass tower in the financial district, hidden in plain sight among banks and law firms. The Golden Dragon didn't operate out of smoky backrooms anymore. That was old-world thinking. Power wore designer suits now. It sat in boardrooms with contracts written by Harvard-trained lawyers. Hyun-woo adjusted his cufflinks as the elevator climbed to the 42nd floor. In the mirrored walls, he admired his reflection. Sharp jawline, slicked back hair, the edge of his neck tattoo just visible above his collar. A dragon's tail curling toward his ear. The mark of a sworn soldier. Soon, it would be the mark of a chairman. The elevator dinged. The doors opened onto a polished conference room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Seoul's skyline. 12 men sat around a black marble table. The elders, the council, the ones who decided who lived, who died, and who ascended. At the head of the table sat an empty chair. Leather, high-backed, the chairman's throne. Elder Chin, a gray-haired man with round glasses, gestured for Hyun-woo to sit. "Thank you for coming." "Of course." Hyun-woo took a seat 3 chairs down from the throne, trying to look humble. Inside, his pulse hammered with anticipation. Elder Park, a broad-shouldered man with a scar across his knuckles, cleared his throat. "We're here to execute the late chairman's will." His instructions were specific. A lawyer in a gray suit stood, opening a leather folder. He adjusted his glasses and began to read. "Into my brothers in the council, I leave my gratitude. To my soldiers, I leave my respect. To the Golden Dragon Syndicate, I leave stability." The lawyer paused. "But the empire, all territories, ledgers, accounts, and authority, passes entirely to the chairman's wife, Crystal Arona." And the floor dropped out from under him. Because the quiet widow he'd humiliated, the woman whose grief he'd mocked, wasn't just anyone's wife. She was his boss's wife, the woman who now owned everything, including him. The kind of silence that swallowed sound, that pressed against your eardrums. Hyun-woo blinked. "I'm sorry, what?" The lawyer repeated, slower this time. "The empire belongs to my wife." "That's..." Hyun-woo looked around the table. No one met his eyes. "That's impossible. The chairman didn't have a wife. He had arrangements, mistresses maybe, but..." "He married her 6 years ago," Elder Chin said quietly. "In private. Very few knew." "Then where is she?" Hyun-woo's voice was too loud, too sharp. "Why isn't she here?" Elder Park's gaze was steady, cold. "That's an excellent question, Mr. Kang. The lawyer has been trying to reach her for 3 days. She was living at the Sky Tower Hotel until..." He glanced at a file in front of him. "Until yesterday, when she was evicted." Hyun-woo's stomach dropped. "By you," Elder Park finished. The room tilted. The faces around the table blurred. Hyun-woo's mind raced back. Black dress, quiet voice, small ceramic urn. "Enjoy the chair, Mr. Kang. It's colder than it looks." "I didn't know," he said, his voice hoarse. "She didn't say. She didn't tell me who she was." "She shouldn't have had to," Elder Chin said softly. There was no anger in his voice, just disappointment. And that was worse. "Where is she now?" Hyun-woo stood, his chair scraping against the floor. "We don't know." The lawyer closed his folder. "Her phone is off. No credit card activity, no hotel check-ins. She's gone." Elder Park leaned forward. "Let me explain something to you, Hyun-woo. The chairman didn't just leave his wife money. He left her the ledger." He let that sink in. "The black book. Every politician we own, every judge, every cop, every secret that keeps this organization alive. Without her, we have territory but no teeth. Without her, we're vulnerable. And the Snake Clan knows it. Elder Chin added. They've been waiting for the chairman to die. If they find her first, if they kill her, they take everything. Soul burns. Hyun-woo's hands gripped the back of his chair. His knuckles were white. I'll find her. You'd better. Elder Park stood, buttoning his suit jacket. You have 72 hours. If the Snake Clan gets to her before you do, you won't need to worry about a promotion, Mr. Kang. You'll be lucky if we bury you in one piece. The meeting ended. The elders filed out. Hyun-woo stood alone in the conference room, staring at the empty chairman's seat. He'd kicked a queen into the gutter, and now he had to crawl through the streets to find her. Hyun-woo started at the Sky Tower. He stood in the lobby where he'd humiliated her, retracing her steps. His men had dumped her bags in the rain. She'd gathered them, soaking wet, and walked east, toward the subway station. He checked the security footage. Grainy, black and white. There, Crystal, dragging a suitcase, the urn clutched to her chest. She descended the subway stairs at 11:47 p.m. He followed the trail, checked ticket records, pulled surveillance from 3 stations. She'd gotten off in Itaewon, the foreigner district, a place where people disappeared if they wanted to. Hyun-woo spent 16 hours walking streets, flashing her photo to shopkeepers, motel clerks, street vendors. Most ignored him. A few spat at his feet. One old woman roasting chestnuts looked at the photo and shook her head sadly. She came through yesterday, the woman said. Looked lost. I gave her tea. Where did she go? Why, so you can hurt her again? The old woman's eyes were sharp. Men like you always hurt women like her. Hyun-woo forced himself to stay calm. I need to protect her. There are people looking for her. Dangerous people. The woman studied him for a long moment. Then she pointed down an alley. Motel Bluebird, 3rd floor. But if you make her cry, I'll curse you myself. Hyun-woo found the motel 20 minutes later. It was a dump. Peeling paint, flickering neon sign, the smell of mildew thick in the stairwell. He climbed to the 3rd floor, his heart pounding in a way that had nothing to do with exertion. Room 307. He knocked. No answer. He knocked again, harder. Mrs. Orona, it's Kang Hyun-woo. I need to speak with you. The door cracked open, just an inch. One dark eye stared at him through the gap. Go away, Crystal said. I can't. I need you to come back. No, you don't understand. I understand perfectly, Crystal said, her voice calm, cold. You threw me out. Now you need me, and you think you can just order me back like I'm one of your soldiers. This isn't about orders. You're in danger. Hyun-woo lowered his voice. The rival clans know who you are. They're hunting you. If you stay here, then I'll die in peace, she said. Better than living in a world where men like you decide my worth. The door started to close. Hyun-woo slammed his palm against it. Please. The word tasted like broken glass in his mouth. The door stopped, opened slightly wider. Crystal's face came into view. No makeup, exhausted, but still unnervingly composed. Did you just say, please, Mr. Kang? His jaw tightened. Yes. Say it again. What? You heard me. She crossed her arms. Say please again, louder. Rage flared in his chest. He was Kang Hyun-woo. He didn't beg, didn't grovel. But behind him he heard footsteps in the stairwell. Slow, deliberate, wrong. Please, he said through clenched teeth. Come with me, now. She glanced past him toward the stairs. Her expression shifted just slightly. Fear flickered across her face. She slammed the door. Hyun-woo swore, reaching for the handle, but then he heard the lock click from inside. He turned toward the stairwell just as 2 men rounded the corner. Black jackets, tattoos on their hands. Snake Clan. They saw him, froze, then reached for their guns. Hyun-woo moved. He grabbed the nearest man's wrist, twisting until bone cracked. The gun clattered to the floor. The second man fired. The bullet punched through the wall 6 inches from Hyun-woo's head. He ducked, swept the man's legs, and slammed his elbow into the man's throat. Both assassins collapsed. Hyun-woo grabbed the fallen gun, breathing hard. Behind him, the door to room 307 opened. Crystal stood there, pale, staring at the bodies. "They'll send more," Hyun-woo said. "We have to go." She looked at him for a long moment, then nodded. But she didn't move. "What?" he snapped. "My bags," she said quietly. "The ones you threw into the rain, I want them back." Hyun-woo stared at her. "You're joking." "I'm not." "There are killers coming and you want—" "I want what's mine, Mr. Kang." Her voice was steel. "You took it from me. Now you give it back." He wanted to scream, wanted to grab her and drag her out, but something in her eyes stopped him. This wasn't about bags. It was about power, about dignity, about making him pay. "Fine," he bit out. "Where are they?" "I hid them. In the subway station locker, number 237. She held out her hand. "You'll need the key." Hyun-woo snatched the key from her palm. "Stay here, lock the door, don't open it for anyone but me." He ran. The subway station was a 15-minute sprint. His lungs burned. His suit jacket was soaked with sweat. He found locker 237, jammed the key in, and pulled out 2 battered suitcases and a cardboard box tied with string. This was what she'd saved. This was what mattered. He ran back, took the stairs 3 at a time, burst into the hallway, and stopped. 4 more Snake Clan soldiers stood outside room 307. One was kicking the door. Another had a knife. Hyun-woo dropped the bags, pulled the gun. "Step away from the door." They turned. One smiled. "Kang Hyun-woo, you're on the wrong side of this." Last warning. The man with the knife lunged. Hyun-woo shot him in the leg. The man screamed, collapsing. The others rushed him. It was brutal. Close quarters, fists and elbows and the crack of bone. Hyun-woo took a knife to the ribs, shallow, just to graze, but he kept moving, kept fighting. One man went down, then another. The last one ran. Hyun-woo slumped against the wall, bleeding, gasping for air. The door opened. Crystal stepped out, her face pale. "You're hurt," she said. "I'm fine." He pushed himself upright, grabbed her bags, and shoved them into her arms. "Here, your things." She looked down at the suitcases, then at him. "Thank you," she said softly. "Don't." His voice was harsh. "Just get your stuff, we're leaving." She didn't argue this time. The safe house was an hour outside Seoul, hidden in the mountains. A small cabin, isolated, off the grid. Hyun-woo's phone buzzed constantly with updates from his men. Snake Clan moving through Itaewon, checkpoints on every major road, a bounty on Crystal's head. He ignored them all. Inside the cabin, Crystal sat on the couch, staring at her hands. Hyun-woo stood by the window, watching the tree line. His ribs ached, his knuckles were split. "Why did you do it?" she asked suddenly. "Do what?" "Fight them. You could have run." He didn't answer. "You don't even like me," she continued. "You think I'm weak, pathetic, so why risk your life?" Hyun-woo turned to face her. "Because you're the chairman's wife. Because without you, the entire syndicate falls apart. Because it's my job." "Is it?" She tilted her head. "Or is it because you realized you made a mistake?" His jaw clenched. "I didn't know who you were." "Would it have mattered?" Her voice was quiet, cutting. "If I was just a poor widow, would you have treated me any differently?" Silence. "That's what I thought," Crystal said. Hyun-woo crossed the room, crouching in front of her so they were eye level. "You want an apology? Fine. I'm sorry. I was an arrogant bastard. I humiliated you. I threw your things in the rain. I treated you like garbage." His voice was low, rough. "But I'm here now. I'm bleeding for you. So if you want revenge, if you want to watch me suffer, great. You'll get your chance. But right now, I need you to survive. Can you do that?" She stared at him. Then slowly she nodded. "Good." He stood, wincing as his ribs protested. "Now get some sleep. Tomorrow we figure out how to keep you alive." But as he turned away, her voice stopped him. "Hyun-woo?" He paused. It was the first time she'd used his first name. "Thank you," she said, "for getting my bags." He didn't look back. Don't mention it. But in the darkness, he allowed himself the smallest, bitterest smile, because for the first time in his life, Hyun-woo had begged, and the world hadn't ended. Yet. The safe house had 2 bedrooms, a kitchen that smelled like old wood, and silence that pressed against the walls like a living thing. Hyun-woo spent the first night pacing, checking perimeters, monitoring security feeds on his laptop. Crystal stayed in her room, with the door closed. By the second day, the silence became unbearable. Hyun-woo was brewing coffee when she emerged, wrapped in an oversized cardigan, her hair loose around her shoulders. Without the funeral dress and rigid composure, she looked younger, tired, but human. "You don't sleep," she observed, taking the mug he offered. "Can't afford to." "Because you're protecting me, or because you're afraid of what happens if you fail?" He shot her a look. "Does it matter?" "Yes." She sat at the small kitchen table, cupping the mug in both hands. "One makes you a soldier, the other makes you a man with something to lose." Hyun-woo leaned against the counter, studying her. "You're not what I expected." "What did you expect? A crying widow who'd thank you for throwing her out?" "Something like that." He paused. "Your husband, the chairman, what was he like?" Crystal's expression shifted. Something raw flickered across her face before she buried it. He was complicated, brilliant, terrifying, kind in his way. She stared into her coffee. "He saved me when I had nothing, gave me safety, purpose, but he also gave me this." She gestured vaguely at the cabin, at their situation, this cage made of power and blood. "You didn't want it. Would you?" Her eyes met his. "If someone handed you an empire built on fear and told you to smile and rule it, would you want that?" Hyun-woo had spent his entire life clawing toward power, but looking at her now, seeing the weight she carried, he wasn't sure anymore. "I don't know," he admitted. She smiled, sad, knowing. "At least you're honest." They fell into an uneasy rhythm. Mornings, Hyun-woo trained. Push-ups, combat drills, checking weapons. Crystal read mostly. Books she'd packed in those suitcases he'd retrieved. Old novels with broken spines. She also cooked, which surprised him. Simple meals, but good. Better than anything he'd made for himself in years. On the 3rd evening, he found her sitting on the porch steps, staring at the darkening forest. The urn sat beside her. "You loved him," Hyun-woo said. It wasn't a question. "I did." Her voice was quiet. "But love in our world isn't like love in movies. It's complicated, conditional. He loved me, but he also owned me. Do you understand the difference?" Hyun-woo leaned against the counter, studying her. "My father used to say love is a weakness, that men like us can't afford it." "Your father was wrong." Crystal turned to look at him. "Love isn't weakness. It's the only thing that makes this life bearable." She picked up the urn, running her fingers over the ceramic. "He asked me to scatter his ashes at the sea, said he was tired of the city, tired of the wait." Hyun-woo sat beside her, leaving a respectful distance between them. "Why haven't you?" Her voice cracked, just slightly. "Because I'm afraid. Afraid that once I let him go, I'll have to be who he made me, the chairman's wife, the woman who owns an empire." She looked at Hyun-woo. "I don't know if I'm strong enough." He wanted to say something comforting, something wise, but he'd never been good with words. "You're stronger than you think," he said finally. "You've survived this long. That counts for something." She laughed, bitter, tired. "Says the man who threw me into the rain." "Yeah," he rubbed the back of his neck. "I'm not proud of that." "Good," she said. "You shouldn't be." They sat in silence, watching the sun disappear behind the mountains, and for the first time since this nightmare began, Hyun-woo felt something other than panic. He felt responsible, not because she was the key to power, but because she deserved better than what he'd given her.
The attack came at dawn. Hyunwoo woke to the sound of gravel crunching outside. His instincts screamed before his brain caught up. He grabbed his gun, crossed the hall, and burst into Crystal's room. "Get up, now." She was already awake, sitting on the bed, eyes wide. "What?" "They found us." He pulled her to her feet, shoving her toward the closet. "Stay here. Don't come out until I say." "Hyunwoo, stay here."
He closed the closet door just as the front window shattered. Gunfire exploded through the cabin. Hyun-woo dove behind the couch, returning fire through the broken window. 3 men, note 4, advancing from the tree line. Snake Clan, professional, coordinated. Someone had told them where to look. Rage burned through Hyun-woo's veins. A mole, one of his own men, had sold them out. He took down the first attacker with 2 shots. The second rushed the door. Hyun-woo met him with a knife, brutal and close. Blood sprayed across the walls. But there were too many. A bullet grazed his shoulder. Another punched through the kitchen cabinet behind him. He heard Crystal scream his name from the bedroom. He moved without thinking. Hyun-woo ran toward her room just as one of the attackers kicked in the bedroom door. The man raised his gun, aiming at the closet. At Crystal. Hyun-woo threw himself between them. The bullet hit him in the chest. He went down hard, the world spinning. Pain exploded through his ribs, his lungs. He heard gunfire, different, sharper, and then the attacker collapsed. Crystal stood in the closet doorway, holding Hyun-woo's backup pistol, her hands shaking. "Oh, God," she whispered. She dropped the gun, falling to her knees beside him. "Hyun-woo, stay with me." "Vest," he gasped. His fingers found the Kevlar under his shirt, cracked but intact. The bullet hadn't penetrated. "I'm okay." "You're not okay." She pressed her hands against his chest, checking for blood. Tears streaked her face. "Why did you do that? Why did you—" "Because you matter more than I do." The words came out raw, honest. "You're the chairman. I'm just—" "Don't." Her voice broke. "Don't say that." She helped him sit up, her hands gentle despite their trembling. Outside, the gunfire stopped. Sirens wailed in the distance. His backup team, finally arriving. But Crystal didn't look away from him. "You saved me," she said softly. "It's my job." "No." She cupped his face, forcing him to meet her eyes. "It's not. You chose this. You chose me." Hyun-woo didn't have an answer for that, because she was right. The mole was identified within 48 hours, one of Hyun-woo's junior soldiers, bribed by the Snake Clan with money and promises of rank. He was dealt with, quietly, permanently, but the damage was done. Elder Chin called an emergency meeting. Hyun-woo and Crystal were summoned back to Seoul, to the glass tower, to the boardroom with the empty chairman's seat. The elders sat in judgment. "Mrs. Arona," Elder Chin's voice was grave. "The syndicate is fracturing. Our soldiers are confused. Our rivals are emboldened. We need leadership. We need you to take the throne." Crystal stood at the far end of the table, composed in a black suit that made her look like a warrior queen. Hyun-woo stood behind her, silent. "And if I refuse?" she asked. "Then we dissolve the Golden Dragon," Elder Park said bluntly. "We divide the territory among the council. The empire your husband built dies with him." "And the families, the soldiers, the people who depend on this organization for protection?" Elder Park's expression softened just slightly. "They suffer. Gang wars, chaos, blood in the streets." Crystal closed her eyes. Hyun-woo saw the weight settle onto her shoulders like a physical thing. "I'll do it," she said finally. "I'll take the seat." Relief rippled through the room. "But," her voice continued, sharp, "I choose my own second in command, someone I trust, someone who's proven their loyalty." Elder Chin nodded. "Of course. Do you have someone in mind?" The room fell silent. Everyone expected her to name one of the elders, someone experienced, someone safe. Crystal turned, looked directly at Hyun-woo. Him. Shock detonated through the boardroom. "Absolutely not," Elder Park snapped. "He's the one who evicted you, who humiliated you."
He's the one who bled for me, who threw himself in front of a bullet, who fought off assassins when he could have run. She stepped toward Hyun-woo, her gaze unwavering. He made mistakes, but he owned them, and he's earned my trust. Hyun-woo stared at her, speechless. This was insane. She was giving him power, real power, when he'd done nothing to deserve it. "Crystal," he said quietly, using her first name for the first time, "you don't have to—" "I know what I'm doing." She turned back to the elders. "Hyun-woo Kang is my second. That's not negotiable." Elder Chin studied them both for a long moment. Then slowly he nodded. "So it be." The coronation banquet was held at the Grand Lotus Hotel, the most opulent venue in Seoul. Crystal chandeliers, silk curtains, tables laden with food that cost more than most people's monthly rent. Every major syndicate family attended, allies, rivals, neutral parties watching to see if the widow could actually hold power. Crystal entered the ballroom in a gown that was more armor than fabric, black silk with gold embroidery, her hair swept into an elegant knot. She moved like royalty, like she'd been born to this. Hyun-woo walked 2 steps behind her, scanning the crowd. His hand rested near the gun hidden under his suit jacket. Elder Chin stood at the center of the room, holding an ornate ceremonial blade, the chairman's sword, passed down through 3 generations. "Crystal Arona," he intoned, his voice carrying through the hall, "do you accept the burden of leadership, the weight of the empire, the responsibility of all who serve under the Golden Dragon?" Crystal knelt before him. "I do." "Then rise, Madam Chairman." She stood. The room erupted in applause, polite, measured, but applause nonetheless. That's when the doors exploded inward. Snake Clan soldiers flooded the ballroom, guns raised, screams erupted, guests dove under tables. Hyun-woo's men drew weapons, forming a protective circle around Crystal. At the entrance stood a man in a red suit, Lee Tae-sung, the Snake Clan's boss. He smiled, cold and predatory. "Madam Chairman," he called mockingly, "congratulations on your coronation. I brought a gift." He raised his gun, aimed at Crystal. Hyun-woo moved. He threw himself in front of her, his body a shield. The shot rang out, but it didn't hit him. One of his men took the bullet instead, collapsing with a grunt. Chaos erupted. Hyun-woo's soldiers returned fire, tables overturned, glass shattered, but the Snake Clan kept coming, wave after wave. "Get her out!" someone shouted. But Crystal didn't run. She grabbed a fallen gun, checked the magazine with practiced efficiency, and fired. Her shot took down a Snake Clan soldier advancing on Elder Chin. The room froze. Crystal Arona, quiet, grieving widow, stood in the center of the carnage, gun steady, eyes blazing. "You want my empire?" she shouted at Lee Tae-sung. "Come take it." The Snake Clan hesitated, and in that heartbeat of doubt, the Golden Dragon soldiers struck back. Hyun-woo fought like a demon. He didn't just protect Crystal, he cleared a path for her, took down 3 men with brutal precision. When a knife slashed toward her back, he caught the attacker's wrist, twisted, and drove his elbow into the man's throat. Lee fired again. Hyun-woo shoved Crystal aside. The bullet grazed his shoulder, burning like fire, but he didn't stop. He lunged at Lee, tackling him to the ground. They grappled, fists and fury, until Hyun-woo pinned him. Blood dripped from his split lip onto Lee's face. "She's not yours to kill," Hyun-woo snarled. Lee laughed, wheezing. "You think you've won. You think this is over." "It is now." Crystal's voice, cold, final. She stood over them, gun aimed at Lee's head. "You attacked my coronation, threatened my people, tried to murder me in my own house." She glanced at Hyun-woo. "Move." He rolled aside. Crystal fired. Lee Tae-sung stopped moving. The remaining Snake Clan soldiers fled. The ballroom fell silent except for the moans of the wounded and the crackle of small fires. Crystal lowered the gun. Her hands didn't shake. Elder Chin stepped forward, blood on his suit, awe in his eyes. "Long live the chairman," he said. The room echoed it. "Long live the chairman." Crystal turned to Hyun-woo. "Are you hurt?" "I'll live," he said, wincing. You? Same. They stared at each other, blood-spattered and exhausted, and then, impossibly, Crystal smiled. Thank you, she said. Always, Hyun-woo replied. 3 weeks later, the Golden Dragon headquarters was rebuilt, reinforced, and more secure than ever. Crystal moved into the chairman's office, floor-to-ceiling windows, a desk made of black marble, and that leather throne she'd inherited. Hyun-woo stood beside her as she surveyed the city below. The elders want me to marry, she said casually, for legitimacy. They have a list of candidates. Hyun-woo's jaw tightened. Do you want to? No, she turned to face him. But I do need a second I can trust completely. Someone who'll tell me when I'm wrong. Someone who's seen me at my worst and stayed anyway. She reached into her desk drawer, pulled out a folded piece of paper, and handed it to him. Hyun-woo unfolded it, his eviction notice, the one he'd served her that rainy night. It was torn in half. You're on probation, Mr. Kang, she said, her voice soft but firm. You work for me now, not the other way around. You follow my lead, you protect my people, and if you ever treat someone the way you treated me that night, I'll bury you myself. Understood? For the first time in weeks, maybe years, Hyun-woo smiled, a real smile. Understood, Madam Chairman. She smiled back. Good. Now sit. We have an empire to run. Hyun-woo sat in the chair beside hers, not the throne, but close enough, equal enough. And as the sun set over Seoul, casting gold light across the skyline, Kang Hyun-woo realized something profound. He'd spent his entire life chasing power, but serving someone who deserved it, that felt like something better. If you made it to the end, thank you. Stories like this take heart, time, and patience to tell. If this one stayed with you, don't leave quietly. Like the video, subscribe, and tell me in the comments. Your support is what keeps these stories alive.